I've been very happy with the reception of 8th grade, but part of the struggle of that is people can associate you only with that character. And yes, I do share a lot of qualities as Kayla, but it's hard because people just want to cast you as like a shy little socially awkward kid when, you know, but it's hard. It's hard being typecast. But uh it's also working with people, even especially people I know who are like in a project and then I'm auditioning for it and I don't get it. And I'm like, oh, that hurts. That burns.
It's interesting hearing about the idea of people sort of wanting to cast you in the same role. I feel like that's something that a lot of actors experience, or a same type of role. And it makes sense because it's like, oh, they see that, well, this is what she did so beautifully, and I understand why they would want that, but it's interesting to hear from your point of like, but there's other things that you can do, and there's other characters that you can service well. What are the types of characters that you're most interested in playing now? Like today, what would your dream type of role be?
Oh, I don't know. It's such a hard question for me because I feel so interested in so many different kinds of projects, I guess. But I don't know, just the complete opposite of what people think of as me. I think that's another thing too that comes with acting in the industry so young is you change day to day. I know I do at least. So it's really hard when might have been one way when you did a role and now you feel like you can't even replicate that, even if people want to cast you as that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
So I don't know. I just really want to explore a variety of things because I feel like I don't even know myself yet. So I don't really know what I want in terms of acting, at least.
That's really smart. It almost sounds like the idea of kind of you personally, correct me if I'm wrong, but like outgrowing some aspects of characters that you've played previously. So then it's like, well, what do you do when you're grown and developed out of that sort of version of a character, and how do you evolve and find the next character that suits who you are today and who you are as a person now? Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I think that's a completely fair assessment. And, I mean, I feel like you probably have experience with that too, being so young in the industry. And it's a struggle because, again, especially when you're an adolescent, like you don't even know what you want, and you can kind of get ping-ponged around through roles, which can be interesting. But yeah, I mean, I was fortunate and I got cast in Despicable Me when I was 5 years old. And that was a great thing. That was very fun. Yeah, but that's been looming over me my whole life, which is very strange. And I get people even now thinking of me as that character. And I'm like, that's really cool. But I'm 17 now and I want to do something different.
I had an adjacent experience where I played this character on sort of an adjacent but reverse experience where I played this character that was like very rebellious and like a juvenile delinquent and kind of like a badass. And I was raised Mormon, and I was very like sensitive and very hyper anxious, like to where my voice was an octave higher than what I made it on TV. Like if my character talked like this, I was like, hi, like scary difference. And constantly being recognized for that role and seeing people's disappointment when I wasn't that. I wasn't cool. I was wearing clothes from the children's place. Like I was the furthest thing from that character, and seeing just their reactions shift from like, oh, you're not that, was heartbreaking and also confusing, because then I tried to overcompensate and be more like the character. Because I was like, well, that's what people want. People want me to be that character all the time. So I'll just completely abandon myself and try and be that. And then just kind of realizing, well, where am I in this equation, and getting to the bottom of like my identity in the midst of trying to overcompensate and be more like a character that people liked me for was really difficult, and something I don't even think I started to fully grasp until I quit acting a couple years ago and was able to go like, okay, well, who am I without being somebody else?
Yeah. It's very hard developmentally when you kind of become more of a product than a person to people, and you become, an icon in ways good and bad, but you become non-human to me. And I mean, I know for me, it was really hard in school, especially when I was young, and Despicable Me was my thing. Because instead of my peer group seeing me as, a person, they would be like, oh, do the voice, do the voice, do the voice. Because they were all the age group for watching the film. So that was very hard from a young age to like, yeah, just be this thing you're not.
Totally. Where are you at now in your relationship with acting? Do you love it? Are you passionate about it?
I mean, I do love it. I go back and forth often. I even had moments, especially after 8th grade, where I was like, I never want to do this again. I'm going to quit. I'm so sick of it. And then like, I always go back and forth, and it's really hard to commit to how I feel. But, I feel very lucky because every time after I walk away from a project, I'm like, well, regardless of whatever, I'm so thankful for the experience I've gotten as an artist, as a person, the people I've gotten to meet. But, again, it's hard. I've done this my whole life, and I feel very tied to it. And I feel like it's in some ways what's expected of me. But, there's absolutely other things I'd like to do.
Like what?
Well, as I mentioned, I really like music. I would love to do music. I mean, I've done a lot of writing. I have a few scripts that I've been tinkering around with. I feel, I don't know, directing seems very daunting, but I feel like that would be fun. So a lot of entertainment focused things, because of course, but, I want to try so much stuff.
Yeah. Why did you consider walking away from acting after 8th grade specifically?
Well, I mean, it wasn't just 8th grade specifically, because I've had that moment a lot. But uh, after 8th grade, I felt this enormous pressure to like just to be great. I I didn't really. I'd been acting for a very long time, but I didn't actually know how to act well. And I mean, even during the 8th grade process, that was a big learning experience for me. But I feel like even then, I still didn't exactly know how to channel everything I was doing. Um, and I got so anxious just after the whole thing, because I'm like, okay, wow, people know who I am now. And the next thing I have to do has to be even better. It has to be amazing. It has to be great, because I have this, people expect that from me, I guess, or else nothing's going to matter. I'm not relevant. I should die. That's always,
Die.
it always comes back to that.
So then what was your next role immediately following 8th grade?
Yeah. So my next role was in the show Castle Rock, and that was actually a massive learning experience for me. It was my first limited series. It was my first horror film, which was super fun. I never want to see fake blood ever again, though. It is horrible, because it's sugar. It's like sugar, so it's so sticky and terrible, and it stains. Anyways, yeah, but that was my next role, and I had done an entire year of press. I did January of 2018 to January of 2019 of press for 8th grade.
Oh my God.
Yeah, because we were at Sundance, and then I ended up presenting at the 2019 Oscars, which was insane. But that was my life for a whole year, and I wasn't working on any other projects because I was just so busy with this movie. And then I didn't even audition for Castle Rock. I was offered that role. Uh, and that was very daunting to me, because I'm like, well, did I earn this? Do I deserve this? Am I going to be able to, compensate, I guess? And yeah, I thought it was a great show. I got to work with Lizzie Kaplan, by the way, who is a phenomenal actress. And our season of the show, because it's anthology, was like a prequel to Stephen King's Misery. So she played a younger Annie Wilkes, and I was her daughter. And it was super cool. But the thing about the show is it didn't get any recognition. At least not like I personally think it should have, because again, Lizzie was fantastic. But even then, I felt so much self-doubt in my role. It was a limited series, so the episodes would come out weekly. And I just remember sweating so much before each episode came out. Because I'm like, I don't even care if people are watching this. We spent 7 months shooting it and then immediately went to the premiere at Comic-Con 2020. Was it this year? No, 2019. And I just I didn't know what to expect from myself. And I didn't know if I was actually good in it and not. It's a very, anxiety inducing thing to do a whole project like that and not just feel any sense of sureness in your abilities. But
right. On the day, did you feel like you were able to channel the instincts? You mentioned sort of during 8th grade, not being sure if you could channel those instincts that you had on command, I guess, in the future. Did you feel like you were able to, and you kind of were more in touch with yourself as an actor at that point?
I feel like coming away from that project, I'm now able to be better in general and kind of channel those, somewhat on command, I guess. But you know how acting is. It's not always like that. But I know in the beginning I wasn't doing my best, I guess. I was trying my hardest, but I feel like it was always a struggle for me because I could just never place what I had to do exactly. And I don't know. The directors were wonderful on that. So I had a great experience working with different styles of work. And again, coming out of it, I feel like I'm a better actor, but I know the process was just very doubtful for me. And I keep going on and on, but it's hard looking back on this kind of stuff that caused me so much anxiety, and being happy with the end product, but just knowing how uncertain I was throughout the whole process.
But does it not give you confidence that you were maybe uncertain throughout, and then you see it and you're like, oh, well, I'm really happy with that. So maybe that self-doubt was potentially unjustified. And in the future, I can just waltz in confident.
I don't know, though. I mean, I feel like, for me at least, I think self-doubt is really important. Yes, it can really just take hold and get you down sometimes, but how else are you gonna, improve if you're not scared of being bad? I don't know, maybe not scared of being bad, but I think the root of self-doubt is this want to be better, because you're so unsure if you're there yet. And I feel like for me, I always want to strive to be better.
That's really smart and very compelling.
I don't know. I mean, I think you can tell this is an issue I've struggled quite a bit with. So you find different ways to rationalize it, I guess.
I have this thing where I don't doubt my sort of creative process, I guess. If I'm writing something or on the day, if I'm directing actually feels really comfortable for me. I feel like, well, I know exactly what I want. I know exactly how I want it to look. I know exactly what I want the shots to be. I know exactly what I want the performances to be. But that's all process. As soon as the word career enters the equation, forget about it. I'm unraveled, because worrying about where the fuck my career is going to go, I don't know. And the pressure of well, what if I never make it as a writer director? That's what I want to do. And I quit acting. Was that the wrong fucking choice? Should I have not done that? That plagues me. That's where absolutely the root of my anxiety is, just this worry about the uncertainty of the future and what happens if I made the wrong choice and I shouldn't have quit acting. I mean, I should have quit acting for my own mental health, truthfully. But what if for career-wise, that was the wrong choice? Everybody, my whole family was like, "What? How, you can't quit acting. Why would you throw this away? Why are you going to pursue this thing that you have no experience in? What are you thinking?" But it just felt right. And now I am wondering if it was right, because it felt right at the time. And now it's right. I'm caught up in kind of that whirlwind of self-doubt. That's where I'm at.
I mean, I feel the same way. I'm the before I make whatever leap. I'm still happy acting. It's steady, whatever. It's a living. But I completely sympathize, or empathize rather, with everything you've said, because it's just so hard, but you have to learn to trust your gut instinct, I think, you know, because life is so short. You got to do what makes you happy, and you can't spend all this time, you know, mulling over whether it was the right career choice. Because you're so right. It's about like it's about the process.
About the journey.
That's one of yeah. It's about the journey, not the destination. Yeah. Oh my God. But it's I think self-doubt is especially hard with acting because I enjoy the process when I'm like in the scene, but you also have to worry so much about external aspects you can't control. And that's something I'm always very conscious of on projects, or at least now I try to be. Because, you know, you get there, you shoot it, you do it your way, whatever. But then after that, it is all up to the editor and the director and whoever, and you have like no control other, you know, unless you're producing, I guess. And that's a very big thing to tackle because you can be in a scene and see it as this way, you know, and you think this is like the way it should be, and that's what it was on set. And then editing room, it's completely different. And that's very daunting to not be behind the scenes like that.
Absolutely. Well, sounds like you have a strong point of view. I'm excited to see what you wind up writing and directing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I don't know. I have so much love for this industry, and I want to hold myself to a very high standard, which is not always reasonable, almost never reasonable to hold yourself to, you know, perfect standards. But that being said, because I love this industry so much, I just take great care into the type of things I try to make. And then it's hard when you can't, you know, have the control you want, especially being my age.
Sure. You've worked with incredible directors, so I imagine this might not be your experience, but I'm curious if you've ever had an incident where a director's giving you direction and you're like, your gut instinct is very against however they're wanting you to perform that scene, and you're thinking like, no, I know it should be this other way, but then, you know, you gotta, as an actor, gotta listen to the director, gotta take the feedback and move on. Have you had that experience where you're like, your guts just going, no, that's not how I want to do it? No.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean, I obviously won't name names, but there's been at least 2 instances where I've worked with people and I'm like, oh God, you see this character as everything I hate about how people see them. Like, and I think part of it too is if they're familiar with 8th grade, they're like, oh, this is like who you are as an actor. This is what you do. And then I'm trying to do a thing with the character and make it interesting and make it artistically as what I see good. And then we do this scene, first day on set, whatever. And you're like, oh, like you just want me to do this stupid, you know, I don't know, I'm blanking on the word, but you know, like a character instead of a person. And that's very hard. But honestly, a lot of the time, I gotta be honest, I just say fuck it and do what I want because I'm like, if they fire me, whatever, I'm 17, I'll go to high school. I don't care.
Good for you. Oh my God. I love that.
I love being able to take advantage of the fact that I don't have to provide for myself. So I try to, you know, be artistic when I can and make bold and brash decisions.
That's great. I mean, it doesn't count because it's sitcom acting, which I completely disregard it. It's gosh. But we had this director always wear this like a grape colored shirt. And he was the only director that I really struggled with the show. Everybody else, like I adored, but he would come on that set and I'd just be like, dear God, I know I almost accidentally said his name. I know that he's going to want me to shout my lines like a fucking loony bin, like just set, swing open the door and like scream a line. And I would like part of my sarcastic delivery came from the fact that I was almost mocking how he was telling me to do the line. I'd be like, okay, he wants me to do it that way, I'll do it that way. Like, just be sarcastic. And I'm glad I didn't slip and say his name.
Well, that's what the power of editing is for. By the way, I do think sitcom acting counts. I know you might think it doesn't, but it is a very hard skill to master. Um,
You think so? Interesting. Because I feel like I feel like the rhythm of sitcoms is such that it doesn't even matter what words you're saying. If you open a sitcom door, like if you open the door on a set of a sitcom and you're like, ba-da-da-da-da-da-da, doesn't even matter what you said, that rhythm of ba-da-da-da-da-da will make people be like, ah!
I mean, I guess, but I think there's a reason why some sitcoms hold such a special place in people's heart compared to other ones. And I think it's impossible, if I don't know, I just think there's like, theater acting, film acting, TV acting, they're all like different skills. And yes, you can rely on like the setup, but I don't know. I think actors matter. I think actors matter. So that's my 2 cents.
I think actors matter and we should die. Is that what that's
Yeah, and we should die, as we all will. But that's okay.
We'll all get through until we won't.
Yes, and then we will be consumed by the worms.
When in your life have you felt like a certain phase of your life have you felt the least self-doubt? Does a phase even come to mind?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think right now I'm feeling a lot better than I have, which is awesome because I don't know, there's something kind of freeing about quarantine. Like, yes, it sucks to see other people doing projects or whatever, but it's nice because no one's doing anything also. So we're all on the same level. I don't know. We're doing a very cool thing right now. I will say that, but you get what I mean.
It sort of takes the pressure off in some ways.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that goes back to comparing yourself with people, but there is something very nice about just like having some time to yourself and not being caught up in life and just like getting to do what you want for a minute. And I think when you're able to have time to work on what you're truly passionate about, that makes you doubt less what you might be worried, about.
Totally. No, that I think 100%. If you're throwing yourself into something that you believe in wholeheartedly, you don't have that space for the anxiety.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you just fill up all your time so you have no time to be doubting.
Yeah, I gotta make that note so that I can just not
Coping mechanisms.
Right? What are some things that you don't doubt? Like in general, if let's say there are different categories for self-doubt. There's like career, there's relationships, there's
Yeah. I mean, I think in some senses I feel self-doubt about everything because again, anxiety. But I feel very secure in my relationships. I mean, I think that's not the case with a lot of people, but I've been very fortunate to surround myself with very, cool people that I trust. And a lot of my friends right now, well, I guess everyone's friends right now, but a lot of my friends are online. And they're lovely, lovely people. And I feel very lucky to know them. And it's very special to have security like that because I struggled with being lonely for a lot of my life. I was a social drifter, and I guess it's part of being gone, from school all the time auditioning or whatever. But it's very nice to just have people you can trust, and they can often calm your self doubt too. If you're like, oh, I feel really bad about this thing and it's not good, please look at it for me. And then to have people honestly be like, it's good. Like, you're okay. Chill out.
You said online friends. You mean you met these friends online, or you're communicating with them online, but they're older friends?
Yeah. I mean, I've met most of them online, but I've also met a lot of them like in real life after the fact. Like I have my very good friend Clementine, and we're actually going to go off to college together. So that'll be fun.
You're going to go to college?
Maybe, sort of. Yes. I don't know. That's another thing. It's very hard with acting to plan for big things like that because you could leave for 2 months, like on a whim. But I'm thinking of trying out community college and just living away from home for a bit, seeing how that works out. And then if it feels like, okay, I can keep up with like going to school again, then real college. But also, what would I study? I'll figure it out.
You don't have any ideas for what you would want to study?
I mean, I think getting a general education is important. I'd probably like to study more creative stuff like writing, music theory, whatever. I don't know. It's so funny though, because I've never felt the want to study any sort of acting stuff. I feel like acting classes would make me want to explode.
Well, yeah, and I feel like there's some people who I feel like there's some performers that are really more like theatrical, and then there's some performers that are really impulsive, and it seems like, you know, or instinctual, and it seems like school or like breaking down rules or something could be confusing for somebody who maybe is more instinctual.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I do think it's very important to educate yourself on the different styles of whatever craft you're doing, just to kind of, you know, learn the rules before you break the rules, whatever. But I just, you know, I went to one acting class my freshman year of high school, which was an experience, because it was a theater class, so different kind of acting than I do. But I just feel like the idea of just doing all these exercises with people, not to diss anyone who does them, but like for me, I feel like that would just make me doubt myself. I don't know. It's very awkward. It's hard to like work with people on that level. Yeah. I just prefer to just get on set, do it.
Nothing would make me doubt myself more than doing a trust fall.
Yeah.
Like, you're
like,
right.
Okay. If a trust fall is going to make you like, I don't know, do a scene about your dead dad better, go for it. Go for it.
Let's act like a moose today.
I love getting to work with English actors so I can like piss them off with my terrible accent. And they're never actually mad because I'm so endearing and charming. But but it's a joy joy in life.
I want to hear about this loneliness. You said you struggled with some loneliness.
Oh yeah, loneliness. I know all about it.
Ew.
Yeah.
Are you a social person? You consider yourself shy?
Oh yeah, I'm extremely shy. I like, especially before I did any sort of press or whatever, I was a very, socially inept person. I didn't know how to talk to people properly. And then kind of via exposure therapy, I learned how to, put on a bit of a bravado better. Yeah, I've always considered myself kind of deeply lonely, which is not the best thing to say about, someone as young as me. But yeah, I've always felt ostracized from my peers, either by being like a gifted kid because I was reading, college level books in 5th grade or whatever, which is not that uncommon. Or, I've had mental illness for a very long time. I'm like 99% sure I struggled ADHD, but it's quite hard to get a diagnosis. But so I've always had, on top of that, acting too, and being away from peers just my age. Yeah, I've just always been like the weird kid, and I was proud of that identity for a long time. And don't get me wrong, I like who I am. I'm happy with who I am as a person. But I took a lot of pride in like being away from other people, especially my age. And it's only recently that I've been able to like kind of come out of that shell a bit and be like, okay, maybe other people are cool.
Interesting. I had a similar experience where I felt I was homeschooled and I was Mormon. Like, these things aren't going to lead to a lot of friends. Like, that's just not the perfect formula for having a great social group. And there were a few exceptions. I would get like maybe really close with one person at a time. But then I actually remember I was 12. I peaked at 12, and it was the year where I was like, okay, I'm gonna distance myself from people, because I think in order to get good at what I do, I need to distance myself from people. And I felt a lot of pressure to be good at what I do, because at that point I was largely supporting, I was the main financial support for my family. So I was like, well, fuck, I need to like keep booking roles. And it happened. Like as soon as I kind of distanced myself and really stopped trying to fit in or stopped trying to socialize, because it always made me so uncomfortable anyway. And once I just kind of settled into the fact that I was like, okay, I guess I'm a little bit of a loner. I guess I'm a little bit of an outcast, and I'll just own that. Then my career started getting better. And also I strangely felt, I felt more in touch with myself, because I think I was just born kind of wanting more solitude, and forcing myself to try and have these interactions actually made me feel kind of fake and inauthentic, because I wasn't necessarily interacting with people that I had anything in common with in the first place.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I totally get that too. I mean, for me personally, I haven't worked on too many projects with people my age anyways, but once you kind of come to terms with your loneliness, I think it makes you better as well. Okay, sorry, that was a tangent. I wasn't fully, I don't want to say it makes you better as a person, but it can make you more secure. But then I think it's the, polar opposites effect, or whatever the effect's called, science terms. At that point, then people start kind of coming to you a bit more, which is very strange. Once you're a bit more confident in who you are, you start to attract people. And I think that's very...
Yeah, and then it's also, I feel like, tends to be people that are more in line with who you are, as opposed to wedge yourself into like this thing that you thought that they would maybe want or something.
Exactly. It's almost like once you're able to be yourself, people like you start hanging out with you. Who would have known? Who could have ever known that?
You know yourself. Do you feel really like in touch with yourself nowadays? And is that part of maybe parenting?
I mean, I think I'm starting to figure out who I am a bit better, but I'm still young, so I don't have any. I don't know. I don't plan on keeping whatever this is for forever, unless this is just who I am for forever. But I think I'm able to be myself a bit more, especially when I can just calm the hell down. Because I get this crazy anxiety, and I've had it for so long now. I've had exposure to it, but I mean, like, I was just on a Zoom call with someone. Like, my palms were like crazy sweating beforehand, and then 30 seconds in, I'm like, okay, this is fine. And I mean, even with this, and you've been lovely, I just get this anxiety, and like, just my body shuts down. But then we get into it and I'm fine.
Interesting. Did you feel it you felt it going into this?
Yeah. I mean, and it's like, it's not even that this is necessarily a daunting thing, even though I was very excited. But I feel it about everything. I mean, it's probably a deep issue I should tackle, but but I mean, I definitely have more than just social anxiety, which is fun.
I know I'm 100% there with you. And honestly, like, knowing that this is coming up, usually like a half an hour before I sit down to do one of these, I'm nervous. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, my hands are actually kind of still like, that post sweaty where they're just like clammy and gross.
Yes. Yes.
That's where we're at now.
Same group.
No, that's exactly, I was feeling that like going in and it happens every fucking time. And at this point, I've done dozens of these and I'm like, when does it end? When does it go away? Or like I had this live show that I would get so nervous ahead of time that there was one time when I had an actual panic attack to the point where I was backstage before going out to do the show and my hands were clenched. Like I got so much anxiety that my hands tightened into little balls and they feel like I can't move them. Like I can't open up my hands because they're so tightened.
Oh my God,
I'm like,
yeah.
I can go out there. I don't know if I'm going to go out there, but of course, a bunch of people paid for tickets. I have to go out there. I don't have a choice. The show's starting. It's like 3 minutes after. I'm like, I got to go. And then I go out and, it turned out really well. And it was the day that I had a panic attack was actually one of my favorite performances. But the process of getting into it, I'm like, I don't know. I got to figure out a way to manage this better because this is not healthy. Like, this is not good. What do I do? I don't know. I'm curious if there are any strategies that you have or that you use. Is it like, I'm assuming some sort of positive self-talk, which I try. And it's like, okay, well, my positive self-talk is talking to my negative self-talk. So how do we get them on the same page and move this forward? Like,
I know it's so hard because your internal monologue can just take over, and you can try to make it positive, but it's just kind of a stream of consciousness.
yeah.
For me, I do best when I can distract myself. Like, we have these stupid phones everywhere, so I just go on Twitter before whatever, if I have to do a stage Q&A or go on some show and just like get out of my head, and I think that's important because it's good to be your authentic self, especially when you can do something cool and personal like this. But it's hard to like let that vulnerability through. So sometimes it's great to, build up this alter ego, even if it's not an actual alter ego, just like the show you who goes up and like, oh, you're doing a bit. You're not nervous because you're doing a bit. That's my thing. I don't know. I'm interested, like, you've clearly done a lot of live stuff. Like, are there any tips you have?
No.
Or just our coping mechanism? I don't know.
I'm trying to think if there's anything that worked for me.
The
last few shows that I did, I got massages beforehand, and that helped somewhat.
I think people ignore how physical anxiety is. So I'm glad to hear that, because getting something that can actually calm your body is very smart. This is not healthy, not recommended. And whatever. I used to not eat before I did anything live. I mean, for the most part, for most of my life, I've had a very small appetite, which has strangely changed lately. I've been eating like a monster. It's insane.
COVID.
But for most of the press I did for 8th grade and stuff, because I was just going in front of people all the time and it was super anxiety inducing, I like wouldn't eat on any days I was working. And it wasn't a body image thing or anything like that. It was literally, I just felt like I would flush myself in front of people. I thought I was going to shit my pants in front of people. So I just chugged water and didn't eat. And that I don't recommend it, but I do think it's a great example of how physical stuff can be.
I had eating disorders for 13 years, so I'm going to steer clear of not eating.
Yeah.
just for the sake of that. But so you mentioned body image and that it wasn't a body image issue. So do you feel like you've always had pretty healthy body image? Do you feel like you've had kind of a good relationship with your body and appearance?
I mean, sort of. I don't know. I mean, I've going back to it, I've always been like, as I've said, the weird kid, the different. So I didn't care to, use makeup for forever. I didn't want to look like any of the other kids because I was me and that was cool. And you know what? I was right. But another part of acting, especially when you maybe don't fit what society sees as like, a suitable kid for TV or whatever, is that kind of, it develops. You start to think, well, oh, am I not getting roles because I look weird? Is that a thing? Like, and I got acne very young, and I didn't really know how to use makeup, so I didn't cover up. And I went to an audition once, actually, like right before 8th grade when my acne was at its peak. And my headshot was from a few months prior where like I had a much clearer face, and I went into the audition and I handed my headshot. They're like, oh, you don't have acne in this. And like, they said that to like little 13-year-old me. And it's like, it's kind of acceptable in the industry to be like that. And that's terrible. And so I haven't really had self-image issues, but it's hard because there's an immense pressure to conform when working in the entertainment industry, and that can spiral into many different, lanes of thought.
I think as a kid, I think people undermine kids.
That was also a thing about 8th grade. And Beanie Feldstein, forever ago, she actually did an essay, and she was like, I didn't know I was brave until people said I was, because she was talking about being like, a more plus size actress. And I kind of went through the same thing. I was like, oh, I didn't know I was brave for having acne until people told me I was. I know 8th grade has been really helpful for kids who look like me, normal kids who struggle with that. But it's also, I'm still a kid, and it's kind of harmful to be like, oh, you're really brave for being weird and aside from the norm. And I'm like, okay, can I just be myself? I don't want to be seen as an act of rebellion, I'm just me.
Wow. I want to read that article from her. That's such a
Yeah, it's so good. I think it was for Teen Vogue. I could be really wrong. If I find it though, I will link you. She's amazing, and the article was great. So
that's great. Have you guys worked together before?
No, we haven't worked together. I've only met her once in real life, which was very cool. She was receiving an award in Santa Barbara for Booksmart, because Santa Barbara Film Festival is one I very much like. So I went last year or this year. God, yeah, but she's just lovely, and she's an icon and a very, very cool person.
Do you feel any self-doubt towards your music now that you're trying to, would you say, transition, or not necessarily transition, but just incorporate?
Yeah, well, yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah, of course. It's very hard too, because I don't necessarily have a ton of musical connections, so it's not something I have a ton of people to like talk to about or like exchange songs, I guess. I don't know. But I've done a few projects in the past. Like I had this little Dungeons and Dragons podcast forever ago that was very short-lived, but I did a ton of music for that, and I was really happy with it. And the podcast itself wasn't like crazy successful because it was very terribly made by me. But the people really like the music I put out, and I have some really, really old stuff on Spotify, and I didn't know what I was doing, but I had a lot of fun. And since then I've been able to kind of build up my skill, and I'm getting to a better point where I actually understand what I'm doing. But yeah, I doubt, of course, especially because I haven't put out anything yet, not anything serious. So going along with this expectation about acting, I feel like in general, both I and sort of society have set a high expectation for anything I put out, which I'm trying to break free of as best as I can and just kind of do whatever. But that's it's an enormous pressure.
No,
Even with something so silly.
Absolutely. So it sort of bleeds into the music. So you even feel like, oh, well, whatever you put out in any regard has to be up to a certain standard because that's what people know you as, and that's the expectation.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, I'm like, I don't think actually people are going to hold me to an enormous standard. I feel like, especially like I'm still young, I'm doing whatever. People are going to be forgiving with whatever I end up doing. But I don't know. It's hard because regardless of what you do, you can feel like you're disappointing people, and that's hard to deal with. It's hard to come down from a big high, or to like. Sorry to interrupt, but to like to be ignorant of your own ability is something I'm very afraid of. I never want to like think I've made something really, really good and then have people listen to it and then be like, oh, they think this is bad, and I'm also really stupid, and I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh my God, I so relate to that fear. It's like, it's terrifying and unsettling to feel like, oh, fuck, do I just think this is good because I'm so in it and I'm so used to it and I'm just like caught up in the whirlwind of it, and maybe I can't see it clearly. I can't see the forest for the trees. I can't zoom out enough. That's I think a very real fear. And sometimes, and I definitely feel that without having, in some ways, I'm grateful for not having external validation while I've just been like plugging away, writing and directing my own stuff and not sharing a lot of it online. I shared a few things, but not much, because it's like I just wanted to have those projects that I could learn and grow from. But in some ways, it's been helpful to not have constant feedback. But in some ways it is like, well, I'm working in a vacuum. And without having that external validation, how do you know how something is, and how will you know if something resonates or not, and where something lands? And I think it's tricky to find that balance of how long do you let yourself learn and grow and kind of like marinate before sharing things, and how much do you listen to the external feedback whose external feedback do you listen to? That's been like a lifelong thing, because it's like, I started out listening to my mom's external feedback. Should have never listened to that, because she should have disregarded that.
I relate to that so much. And it's, don't get me wrong, there's something very beautiful and personal about being able to work on something on your own and just have it like be your thing, regardless of what anyone else thinks. But external feedback is so important, just to like, your own confidence about whatever you're doing. And it's so hard not to listen to it once it's been said. Also, I mean, you just said, whose feedback do you listen to? But it's so hard not to listen to all of it, even if you don't respect the people saying it or their opinions. It's like, once it's in the air, it's there. I've heard it. Oh God, it's the bane of my existence. So
true. You can be like, I don't like what that thing. I don't like what that person is. I don't even know the person, whatever, but it still kind of infiltrates for whatever reason, or can.
Yeah, it can. I mean, like, you can have someone with terrible taste being like, oh, this is awful. And it's like, well, you thought like, Ratatouille was bad. So shut up.
I feel you. All right. Well, we're out of time, but I just have one little wrap up question, and then I'll leave you to your day. Leave you to your night.
You lovely person.
Do you have any advice for somebody who might be struggling with self-doubt now, aka probably everyone? Any advice on some steps that they might take to kind of gain some confidence, or just to deal with the self-doubt? Because sometimes you can't necessarily get rid of it. It might just be there, but something.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, and of course, whatever I say is not the end all be all, because I'm still struggling with it daily. But I like to try and romanticize the things that I don't like about whatever, or whatever I'm doubting, I guess. If I'm like, oh, I wish my life had been different so that I could like have different circumstances and feel more confident in like what I'm doing. I try to like read back my autobiography to myself from the future and think about how an older me would describe that. And, it makes it better for me. I don't know. Because I think about how I reflect on my past mistakes. And, I have had a lot of mistakes. I'm also not that old yet. I don't think so, at least. But I try to look at it through rose-tinted glasses, although that's not always the best decision. But to have a little bit of forgiveness for yourself and to be like, you were learning and we all make mistakes, and just feel some love for yourself. I think it makes going forward easier, because you can take that ideology and you can take how you think about who you used to be and then view it through the lens of who you're gonna be and kind of live that way. I'm not saying ignore any faults you have, of course, but we all make mistakes. Self-doubt is going to be there no matter what. So it's okay to like move forward with a little bit of confidence. Like, well, regardless, I'm going to love myself in the future. So it's okay.
I love that. And I can personally I personally will take that advice, or will try to, because I really struggle with self-forgiveness. That's like one of my biggest struggles, is that I'll just beat myself so much for things that I couldn't have even necessarily controlled from my past. And I'm just like, I regret that so much, or that mistake that I made, or whatever. And it's really nice to like think of it through the rose-colored future self, looking back with the shades on the hat. It's
yeah,
I get it. That's great.
Go ahead.
Oh, no,
I don't know. I was just gonna say, it's hard advice to take because I still struggle with it, but I don't know. End all be all is love yourself, dog.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on. I have so much respect for you and your talent. And I really appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. You're lovely and wonderful and also very talented. And I was very excited for this and it was amazing. So thank you.
I'm so glad. Bye.
Bye.